Good morning. Time to get back into the Redux rewrite, I suppose. Ah, let's see. Where did we leave off? A bunch of uncommitted changes. I see. So we have this diary meal component that we left some to-dos on. To do, convert this next. Okay, and then we have diary meal entry. Right, so I think we lifted some of the action stuff, like this on long press and on click, upwards to the parent component. So we'd have one place. So where is diary meal the place where we're using diary meal entry? And we have our connected component. And then somewhere in here we're using diary meal entry and our table body. Okay, and then left another to do here in logged food action. So I think this is the other side of this to do, right? So we have these open dialog actions, which were for our old style of state management. These actions were from that to open certain kinds of modal dialogues in the UI. And meal update food, meal add food. I think both of these end up showing, maybe not. Right, so this one, this use dialog state is from the old state management solution I had coded up before. So if we, the other thing I want to understand is, so there should also be a place where meal add food. Yeah, so there's a meal add food component that essentially is responsible for helping you find a food item to be able to add it to your diary. Right, so this is where we can search. You have this food search component that does the bulk of that work, including, I think, the ability to switch between barcode scanner versus like text entry. Okay. Okay, I don't think we need to look at diary meal entry here. And then diary, we've updated this component because we didn't need on add food search here. We didn't need to pass that through. Our connected component in diary meal can find that action itself, right? So then we don't need to pass that through, kind of making it so that we're not, I guess we effectively, in one place we're not passing through props, but in another place we are passing through in diary meal entry. But that allowed us to just kind of consolidate where we are handling this interface to our store in one place, moving some stuff down and some stuff up to meet in the middle. And then we added a storybook story file here to kind of show what the component does, and we're using mock service worker to provide mock tRPC endpoint results. Looks like we updated this diary, this top level diary component. Just trying to get oriented since I haven't really looked at this in a week, and make sure I remember kind of where we left off and what we're trying to do, and if it still makes sense. One of the benefits of not looking at this for a week is get some distance on kind of the thought processes involved in the changes, and does it still make sense now? And I think, at this level, it still does make sense to me. I do think this is kind of the next thing to do, is to kind of start looking at our dialogues, and there's some questions. I think this is maybe the last thing we did last stream, if I remember right. So how do we get the consumption ID and date into this component? Right, so what's happening right now is that this use store is not Redux, it's our custom store. We're using this hook to effectively get a value from an RxJS observable, and that's getting us back this dialog object that has some methods, and it has some data elements here, and so maybe what we need to do is introduce like a new part of the state in Redux, so another slice that is just our general, like if we wanted to just mirror this exactly, like this, the way this is working, because we have several different dialogues, but they all use the same hook, and they all use the same dialogue with options and is open, and then what are in the options varies. So we could make a slice in Redux that mirrors that model of having like a dialogue slice, I guess. I don't know if I want to do that though, because then we end up essentially reproducing the problem this has, which is that this options attribute on dialogue, if we hover over dialogue here, we see options is just a record, string to unknown, or an empty object, and we're casting this, right? So this dialogue store doesn't know anything about what we're actually trying to do. So it might make more sense to have separate slices for each kind of modal dialogue, or maybe not even modal dialogue, in the UI. Let me just go back to, let's just look at this. We don't need to see the diff. So that's the code. Can we, I guess right now we can't even see the what this looks like, right? Because we've disabled the action here, because we took away the old use store for the old action mechanism. But we could, do we have stories in here for those dialogues? Add view, edit consumption. Oh, that's not implemented yet. We didn't actually, we just have a placeholder for the story. Okay, what is this? Right. So this dialog is essentially for having you've already selected a food item, like on here we go in the diary view. Let me go back to last week. Did we have food items? No. I suspect a lot of this is going to be broken right now, so let me just find a day where there was definitely some food items. Was that back in February? I wonder if we should make a... It might be kind of neat to have like a calendar view. Like, you know, you click this and you can see a calendar, but just like something that would give you like overall, like, here's where I logged food, or maybe even something that's like a summary that gives you like contrasting, you know, like a calendar view that shows you the days and shows you did you go over or under your calorie targets, or that sort of thing. In fact, I'm going to add that to the project as an idea. Because I don't think I have anything like that in terms of things that I wanted to do. And I don't think I've really shown like this project, but this is basically how I've been keeping track of all the different ideas I have for this app in GitHub. A lot of things. Some of these things may never happen. Some of these things are things that I think all the things in up next are the things that I wanted to do before I actually put this on the internet. Because right now I have the domain name for this, but I haven't set it up anywhere, hosted, so that it would actually be accessible from that domain. I'm eventually going to do that because I want to actually be able to use this myself, and I suppose other people can use it too. Kind of the opposite of other projects that I've done in the past, where I have been more motivated by like, oh, it's a business idea or whatever. This is mainly a thing that I want to be able to use, and it's a neat project, and it gives me an excuse to try out things like tRPC and Redux Toolkit, the Redux Toolkit, and those sorts of things. Okay, I don't see a thing, so let me add a thing here for month view of diary with calorie target over under, and we could add some other ideas there for kind of maybe alternate views or something. I don't know. Okay, anyway. How do we get there? Oh, right. I was trying to find a day that had some food so I could show kind of how you would even get to this logged food actions modal, which again right now you can't get to because the action is disconnected. You know, if I look at Prisma and I look at consumption, occurred March 6th. Maybe it's even my user, so we'll see. Yeah, there we go. Had some delicious organic ginger cubes for breakfast. Not really. These are just something that I have a barcode of to scan. I think it was testing some scanning. Anyway, so you would click the little ... or I think in mobile you would long press on the item, and that would open the dialog, right? And then that would show us title, move, food, which is not the only thing you could do here, but that's the main idea, is that you have the ability, you would see a list of all of your meals, so breakfast, lunch, dinner, and you'd be able to select one to move the item to a different, like move it from breakfast to lunch. say because you added the wrong place or what have you. And then there's also a delete option here. So that's what this component does with the help of actions from our old store. And this is where it kind of gets the work kind of cascades a little, well, maybe not so much, but there's definitely some things we need to do here, right? So we need state to control this dialog effectively, right? So slice in Redux to give us essentially the information here we're getting from dialog right now. So consumption ID and date are the things, and that was kind of our question here. And then is open, I think will also make sense as kind of a state element in the slice. And then what we do from here is there are a couple of actions we use. We either move the consumption. So consumption is the word that I chose to use to represent the idea of you've eaten this for a certain meal on a specific date. So we're moving that consumption to a different meal. Why are we providing the... Oh, right. So the meal ID, this is not like a particular day's meal. This is like a meal type is a way of putting it. So like breakfast, lunch, or dinner. But we still have to know what date that consumption should be on. And right now we don't support moving it to different dates through this UI. So we get the date that the consumption was originally on. But the move consumption operation, I believe, needs to know the date, maybe? Let's look at the tRPC procedure. It doesn't. So why did we need the date? Right, because this just changes the meal ID, right? So we're just updating the consumption record where it's this consumption ID to have a different meal ID. So why does this action take the source ID? So we pass it into this move consumption observable, right? So this is the old store. Just as we have a events subject, taking type of action, and so we can pass in this data into it, and then somewhere else, oops, I didn't select that, there we go, somewhere else, let me turn on screencast, screencasting mode, there we go, so you can see, kind of highlights where I'm clicking, shows when I'm hitting keys, what keys I'm hitting. I need to remember to turn that on. I obviously I don't have that on when I'm just coding by myself because it's a little distracting, but I think people will probably appreciate that. All right. Right, so I was trying to figure out what we're doing with this thing that we're calling source date. So somewhere in the front end code, maybe here in events, so we take the source date from the event. This is kind of our, this function is responsible for hooking onto this events observable and filtering for just the move consumption type. And then we end up calling tRPC. And then as a result of this, we give back the source date. So this is kind of so whatever is listening to this result must want the source date. So let's see, where are we using handle move consumption? Here. Okay, so we have move consumption. So somewhere, maybe here in bus. So the thought here with this bus.ts was that this is where we're essentially doing side effects of things happening. I don't know. It seemed like a good idea at the time, and it sort of worked. But here we're subscribing to events coming from move consumption. And if we get a success, then we know, oh, there should be data. It's interesting. How... Okay, so source state becomes data. Okay. Okay, and so we get a date. So we are essentially introducing a new event in several places. So if we move consumption or delete consumption, so it's the same code here and here, slightly different here. But when these things happen and we get a successful result, then we emit a different kind of event. And something must be listening for get diary meals. So I think the idea here is the purpose of this is to effect a refresh of the data, right? So if we could, if this still was hooked up, we could move this item from breakfast to lunch, and then once the tRPC request completed, we would get a success, and this would emit a new event. And then presumably somewhere we have something that is looking for get diary meals and is issuing a list consumptions by meal. And so this is refreshing the state of the UI. So I think that is important to be aware of, so we can, as we're implementing this action, to ensure that we are doing the same thing in terms of causing this information that's being listed here to be refreshed. Right? So diary meal date so meal entries. So we have entries from the meal, and then meal is being passed from above, right? So basically all the way from the top, which is interesting. So we have this top level diary. So here's where we're getting right. So I think last time we said, yeah, it's new lines, right? So I can tell because the little blue order here that these are uncommitted changes. So last time we were saying that if we wanted data in the front end and it wasn't something we were mutating, that we would just use these hooks effectively for our tRPC procedures to get the data. So now what happens when we want to, somewhere down in the component tree, we want to take some action, and it should cause this to refresh. So that becomes an issue, right? Because then there's not really a way for us to communicate to this component to say, hey, do this query again to get the list of consumptions. So in other words, the things that should be listed in the diary refresh this after we've made some change. So, how do we address that is a question that we'll eventually need to answer. I think we'll have to answer today. And maybe that looks like, we go back and we say, okay, well, we'll put the currently viewed list of consumptions, so in other words, this result, into a Redux slice. Maybe we could do that. We could have this component on mount run an action that then would be a thunk that would ultimately update the store with those values. That's an option. Are there others? I don't know. But we don't have to solve that immediately. So that'll give me some time to think about what other possible solutions there are for that, if any. And then we also have delete consumption here. A similar kind of story, I think. So if we, let's see, handle delete consumption, this is a similar thing. So tracing back, or going back kind of in our step through of this code, the reason we're passing this date in the first place to come back is so that we have the information that's necessary to make that tRPC call to refresh effectively the diary. Although you could have other views that are also using the same these same actions, but to have the date that we are modifying the diary of, to then be able to refresh to ask for new data. So I don't think we will, I don't know, we'll have to see, because we are going to have it's likely that somewhere in the Redux store we'll have that date. Like, skipping ahead and talking about the thing I said we don't need to solve right now, if we're storing this list of meals, maybe we're storing the date too. And so there could be an action that's responsible for refreshing whatever the current date's diary is. Something like that, maybe. The other thing I see here, back in logged food actions, is we're calling dialog.close. And does it make sense to, I guess we could essentially dispatch multiple actions here. Like, we're not changing the consumption ID. We're just passing these. I guess we are. The thing that is variable is the meal ID. So, I guess a question is the new version of move consumption as a Redux action that's probably going to be like a thunk, is that going to be coupled to the details of this? We're going to have a slice that's going to have these values like consumption ID and date in it. Is that action, maybe the action just is very similar to this, and then it takes these values, and does it need to know anything about the our slice where we're keeping that data? And in which case, then we have a separate action that's responsible for interacting with the slice to close the dialog. And then, so then these would just, the equivalent of these would just be thunks that would interface with tRPC and do work. And would be at some point responsible somehow. Maybe it would make sense for that to then in turn refresh our maybe that ties in somehow with how we're going to solve refreshing the list of meals. Okay. Right, and I think we've already touched on this other question. Do we want to have separate slices for each dialogue? I think the answer is yes. That we're going to have a... well, maybe. Yeah, I think so. I mean, on the other hand, these dialogues, at least the way they currently work, their components, they're using the MUI dialogue component, and they are, put into the DOM, just at kind of top level, I think, in the layout.tsx or whatever. And we'd only want to show one at a time. So maybe there's something to be said about having a dialogue slice that says, oh, this is the dialogue that's open currently. But then I don't like that, because then yeah, I don't know if I like that. Just because then we still need the information to power the dialogue. I mean, so we're talking about kind of like, is this dialogue visible or not? But then the other piece of information the other thing we need are these options, quote unquote options of consumption ID, and maybe we need date. Do we need date? I mean, we need date to pass in here. I think long term maybe we don't, but we do need the consumption ID. And meals, I think we'll be able to get. Did we have? I guess we don't have a slice specifically for that, but that is in the settings. So we should be able to get this information from... Yeah, so anyway, so really the only thing this would need, but other dialogues are going to be different, but they're going to need some additional information that's being passed in from whatever is saying, hey, show this dialogue. There may be some information being passed in. And... You could have a... what's it called? Like a discriminated union type. That is in that slice. So that for this kind of dialogue, here are the kind of options. For this other kind of dialogue, here are the kind of options. And you would be able to type that. That is, you would be able to specify here specifically, just like we have this logged food actions options type, you would be able to say, okay, if it's a logged food actions dialogue, then you need a consumption ID. And we could put that into a slice. So if we did that, then we would have a Redux slice that would be for effectively all of our dialogues. And I guess you could, it'd be kind of weird. I guess you could have an action that's just like open dialogue. And you would pass in that discriminated union type, and that could work. And then you would then have like a closed dialogue option as well, and that would very closely mirror this. And I mean, this structure could have looked like that as well, where we could have had this dialogue options be a discriminated union, tied to like, maybe this dialogue object has a type, and so options is based off of that or something. I don't know, but yeah. I think that sounds okay. That leaves the door open. That doesn't. That means that if we have dialogues that need more, essentially input parameters, options, in the language I'm using here, we can still do that. I love it. 42 minutes in, not a single line of code has been changed. Lots of thinking, lots of like thinking through things and figuring out where we left off and all that. So maybe this is boring to others, but it's kind of just necessary to be, to not paint oneself into a corner, I suppose. Okay. So, I don't think we have questions anymore. I think we do have, yeah, Copilot trying to help, but let's see. So, things we need to do. I think it'll be really helpful to be able to see if this is working. I think probably the first thing I want to do is I want to separate without state. Yes. Yeah, basically move the dialog state in Redux. But specifically create dialog slice with, yep, discrim, yep. Yeah, not that. And let's see what else needs to happen. So I want to separate out the dialogue. Right. So the reason I want to do that, Copilot getting ahead of itself, getting ahead of what I want to do next, which is to create a story for just the pure dialogue component without state, so that we can make sure that seems to be working. And then I guess we can also create story for dialogue with Redux. Yep. guess it's really the whole component. Yep. So that we can see, like, if this is in the context of the Redux store provider and we're passing in data, that all still works as well. Which it's not, right? So, we haven't actually talked about changing any of this to actually, update connected component to use Redux actions. Of course, those actions won't exist. We do need to create, create, move consumption, and delete consumption thunks. I wish the VS Code screencast had the ability to not show just like when I'm typing things. Like if I'm doing things that are like hotkeys, to show that, but not every single character that I type. I've probably said that before in a past stream, but it's kind of distracting. Yeah, so I think that lets us move forward on this component. There'll be other things we'll need to do before we can kind of, what we had been working on before, right, is the diary meal. And so we're trying to get to the point where we can update this, which means not only do we need to do this for log food actions, but in order to do this, we also need the other one, the add food, which I think will be more involved. But if we create this dialog slice with these actions, is that how you spell discriminated? I am uncertain. No. It's not like we're going to keep this comment. This is just the to do for now, but it was bugging me that it's not spelled right. Anyway, okay. So, separate out the dialog into its own component without state. So this is, in principle, pretty straightforward, right? We can just take all of this. We're going to have a convention here of our... One of the nice things about having effectively one component per file like this and then just using a default export is that we can call this function whatever we want. And so we can make like a little wrapper function, and then we can say const logged food actions equals and then I guess we don't need this return. We can just do that. Now it's going to complain about a lot of things. We're going to take some props here. And for now, we'll just take in all of these things. Yeah, it's going to be unhappy because we don't have types. Yeah, we'll revisit that in a minute. We do want meals. Is open can be a thing. Like, we don't need to pass in this whole dialog object into this. Handle close, I think, will be a callback we'll want to pass into this. Handle... I think a better convention here is on close, and then on move, and on delete. I think that makes sense. Right, so then this becomes this. Dialog.close becomes on close. I don't, for one, I don't want to have, like, the parent component can be responsible for calling the right thing. So we will leave that like that. And yeah, so this will be we'll do something like, so the question is, do I want, so if I do it this way, where I'm checking the consumption ID and the date, I don't think I need to. Like we should say in the type here that these are not nullable. I don't think onDelete needs the date either, because we're going to have that state already. Cannot. Okay. Can we do that? Is that the right? Oh, we're not using that. Okay. Anyway. Right. So then. See, I think we might just want on move meal.id. And this can just be on delete. Like the consumption as a, like this ID is the primary key or whatever of the consumption, which is linked to a specific meal. Is that right? Meal, food, session, container, consumption. Okay, yeah. So like it should be sufficient to just give the consumption ID if we want to delete the consumption. Do we want to pass the consumption ID to onMove? And if not, then why are we passing it to onDelete? Yeah, I think like it's not going to vary in the context of this dialogue, and so that should be like it's in our store somewhere. So we should be able to just grab that. I don't know. We can always change it later if it doesn't work out. Do we need consumption ID here anymore? No. And we don't need date either. Right? So that is kind of the distilled logged food actions dialog. And then we'll come back to that in a minute. Yep. Heels is open, on close. Yeah, to do. Why is it unhappy about this? Oh, right. So this type expects that there are entries in it, whereas the value coming back from user settings doesn't have entries. Okay. Huh. Okay. Maybe we can get... So there's meal entry, how that's defined. But I guess we don't have... Oh, here we go. I don't know if we need to export that right now. But we can capture this validator for meal. And so meals is an array of meal. And we can, export type meal. That's fun. And then we can go back here. And then oh no, it's an account. Okay. And of course that conflicts with this. With entries. Did that successfully... Yeah, that changed some things. Good. And so then we can we just do this. Export type. Now we're re-exporting this meal type. And so now, this is actually a meal. And we'll fix that. Okay. Right, so, to do. On delete. Yep, exactly. And that's that. What's this complaining about? Nothing. Just out of date. Okay, so now we've, I think, seemingly successfully extracted the dialog component out. And so now we have a component that has no knowledge of our old store or Redux or anything. And we can use this later on. Okay, so separate out the dialog. Okay, so that's done. For now, let's just keep track of our progress like this. I'll be deleting all of this when we're done anyway, but for now it's kind of cool to be able to keep a tally of our progress on working on this file. Okay, so create story for dialog. So I want to create a new file. It's going to be logged food actions.stories.tsx. And I have my VS Code set up so it nests the stories underneath the component. And styles and some other things as well, because I thought that would be neat. All right, so let's just copy one of the other like basic stories. Let's just call this basic. I don't know about args yet. And we want to it's kind of weird. We can just do logged food actions, and we want to import logged food actions dialog. That's our stateless component. I don't know that we'll need those imports right now. And then so here's a thought, right? So I do want to have separate, I want to have some stories that are about the inner component, and then I want to have some stories that are about the connected, reduxified component as well. I guess so first of all, did I not export that? I didn't export that, so that's a problem. I guess it's a small thing, but let's get rid of those archetypes for a minute. Like if I do this, dialog, I lose my nesting. And I think I can really it's such a petty thing, but I could move this into a separate file. I don't like it. On the other hand, here's what we can do. For right now, let's just say this is a story about the logged food actions dialog, and make sure that all looks good. And then we'll switch it to be a story about the containing connected component, and we'll wire that up, because we're not going to do a lot with this anyway, other than making sure that the thing actually renders and looks okay. If this were a more complex component where I wanted to be able to like work on the stateless version and like pass in props in the story and do various things, I might have it as a separate file with a separate story and do that, but not for this, I think. All right. So this exists. I might have to refresh. This is in organisms. Logged food. Okay, so that's not there. So I may have to restart Storybook. Missing default export. So this has a default export. Yeah, export default meta. Okay, let's just try stopping. And we'll run Storybook. Okay. So I still don't see it in here. Oh. I didn't give it a different title. That might have been a problem. There we go. Logged food actions. So meals is undefined. We can set an empty array. I guess I have to go to here. True. Hey. All right. So we have a dialogue. We could add things here. It'll probably be a lot easier to do from this. So we'll do meals. Except it's not name. It's label. I think we're getting some type errors because this is a typed thing. So let's see. It's complaining because we don't have start hour or removable. Sure. Nice try, Copilot. Removable false. All right, what is, okay. Eat lunch at 12, sure. When do we eat dinner? 6 o'clock? Okay. I'm missing a closing bracket there. Interesting. There we go. So move food, move to breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or delete. I think that's working because we are still having the... I don't think we need the on. Go the way. Yeah. Is open is good. Right, because we had the arg already set. So if we were to go to docs, refresh. Yeah, well done. I wonder how that's gonna work with chromatic. If that's gonna confuse it, that because it's a yeah. Here's a question for you: Storybook, dialogue component. Yeah. Okay, so this is just the search of front in the showcase. Mainly I wanted to see how people are containing the dialogue. There's not like a source view there, so let's try a different. Here's a random blog post. Stack Overflow maybe has an answer for us. Someone has made a modal container class. Yeah, sure. But that isn't really scroll. Okay, anyway. Let's take a look here. Okay, so we have MUI dialog root, position fixed. We have a body. Is there a way to make this body like, I guess I could where did it go? Interesting. What if we look at basic here? Oh, that's interesting. Let's refresh. What is... Okay, so that at least... That's good. Docs is weird, but I guess it's not interactable. Dialogue takes over. But I guess for the purposes of chromatic, it's going to be fine because it's going to, I think, go off the basic. In other words, what we've provided here. And so this should, like, it should render and it should be able to capture that and everything. So that's fine. All right. So we've created a story for the dialogue, though it won't last for too long. I think I want to do next is I want to actually convert the story to use our connected component. It'll be broken, but at least by having a broken story, then as we fix things, we can actually see, that it's working. And we'll get some more immediate feedback. So to do that, it's going to be a little bit of a change here. I guess not really, right? As long as this imports the same name, and I'll just call it the same thing. This is going to be different, right? So I need to find one of the examples where I am wrapping. Here we go. So here's a decorator. Grab decorator. This doesn't take any args. We'll add our decorator. And then we'll need to import a few things. We will eventually need to have the settings fetched, so might as well just keep that there. Store provider. Okay. So this will be broken. Ooh. So there are some things that we will need to do. But effectively that's going to be like store.dispatch. We want like a open dialog. Yeah, something like that. I think we'll just use a string here. But this will be like meal update food is the So I was saying before we could have a discriminated union for all the different types of things. Do I want to still have a single action though? I could make separate actions. Now that means a little bit of boilerplate in the slice to make an action for each one. That then under the hood is really the same action with just a different type, the thing that is discriminating the union. I guess that's not necessary. Like in practice, we would have autocomplete here where we are like, because this function will know the discriminated union type, and so it we'll be able to select from the options and that sort of thing. And then I'm not doing options here. I'm just going to do consumption ID, something like that. And I guess that can just all be commented out. And now that I've done this, it would have just been easier to just do this. I have some extra parents somewhere. Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, I see. Yep. And, right, that should have all been in the comments. Okay, so we'll do something like that, which will be the thing that will then get the data into the store that will then result in the dialog being visible at mount. So I guess in that case, the next step has to be to create the slice. So we'll create our second slice, finally. I guess it's just going to be dialog.ts. Let me get rid of some of these side panes so we can see what we're doing here. So, yeah, settings.ts got kind of big. 240 lines. Well, relative to an empty file, it's pretty big. So we want to export const dialog slice equals create slice. Actually, Aw. Okay. Yep. Dialogue. Null. Data. No. As dialogue state. We'll not add any reducers yet. Let's get some things defined here. So I'll do interface, dialog state, dialog. And so, yeah, sure, we can import that. And we're going to do type dialog equals lots of use of the word dialogue. It's getting kind of repetitive. Like this is dialog state, but then we also have a data element, which is also going to be the dialog state. I guess it can be details. That's going to be dialog details. Dialog. Details. Or null. Yep. Feels slightly less repetitive. Then dialog here is going to be meal update food. Food. Consumption ID number. We should, just for illustrative purposes, what's the other one? Meal add food? Food. There you go. Okay. I think there are other details that we need to add to that, but I just don't want to go bother looking up that other dialogue right now and figuring out what it needs. So what's this complaining about? We don't have reducers. Okay. So we do want a reducer though. Yep, open dialog. And so the payload is this bit right here. So, is this going to work now? Can we... Nope. All right, so there's a bit that we need to export our actions. And we also want this bit here. So we want to export const. Yep. And we want state as well. We'll do that in the same order. Except this will be dialog slice. There we go. Then when we come over here, okay. Nope, can't do that there. How? Yeah, property dialog is this. so dialog details is either this or it's that. Yep. So ooh, I do like dialog type. Okay, but what I was hoping for was that it would know the type here. Is there something I need to do? So state is a writable draft dialog state. Action is infer A. Yeah. What if payload type any? It'd be really nice if there was an easy way to tell it that I wanted that action's payload to be a specific type. Slicer is probably not the best. Maybe just slice. Create slice. Prepare notation. Reducers received all reducer. Ooh. Wait. Can we just... Is this a thing? Okay, now it knows that the type is dialog details. There we go. Now we have type information. Right, so if we did this, yeah, we do have the other option there, and that's valid. Good. Goody, goody, goody. We can add a close dialog while we're at it. That seems good. Seems fine that we're clearing details. I think that will prevent some weird bugs in the future if things go wrong. Now, yeah, state is still undefined because we've not actually changed the code to to use the store at all. We're still trying to use the old store. I think though, I'm gonna take a little bit of a break just for a couple minutes, stretch the legs about halfway through the stream. And when we come back, it'll be time to actually swap all of this out for our new actions. Well, at least one, right? So we can use our existing slice to get the settings. Hey, Mono. Right in time for break time? Yeah. How about that? Oh, it must be, what time is it there? It must be quite late/early for you. Um, 3 a.m. Wow. Well, sorry for the bad timing. Oh, you have Monday off. Well, that's good. Well, like I was saying, I'm gonna take a quick break. When I come back, get into the meat. Oh, and Tuesday. Nice. Get into the meat of switching out this component to use Redux and finally be able to see it in action. And then should have some time to maybe work on the next dialogue as well, which should start picking up pace. I guess probably the next step after getting this dialogue working will be going back to the whatever the component is called that's showing this dialogue and updating it as well. And then we should be able to see that in action as well. And then on to the next thing. So pick this back up in a few. BRB. All right, let's get back to it. Thank you. Let's give the legs a bit of a stretch. And take a walk around. Open the shades, let a little light in. All right, so what do I want to do first? Well, we did create the story for logged food actions with Redux, and did set up the dialog slice. We are going to do, yeah, we're going to need to do the move consumption and delete consumption thunks soonish, but I think because we don't need those to see the story working, because right now it's not working. Let's focus on getting what we have working before moving on. Feels like a good approach to take. So to do that, we need to probably just get rid of all of this first of all, and get rid of all the old imports. There we go. Okay. And then I need to remember how to, mean, I think we do want something like, I guess we can use a selector, right? So we want meals. I think we want our setting slice again so we can add that selector. Okay. Can we tell this the type of meals? Or would it infer it if that was in, like, we have user settings. And that has a thing. So maybe not. So going back to the definition for create selector. That's super annoying. Just like clicking, holding shift, just like it's in the way. Okay. So create selector. So create selector function, args unknown. Oh, here we go. F extends. Normalize function. Oh. Don't we have... Okay. Like, I'm pretty sure there's a... We have a type. If I could type. Yeah. Yeah, we can import this stuff from those type files rather than importing it from server. Because it feels kind of weird to have like our front end store dependent on stuff from the server folder. Types meal gets us 1. Yep, that gets the other one. So now meals over here, hey, has a type. Okay, so then the other thing we want means going back to the dialog slice, and we want to define a const select is open, I guess. Yep. Sure. And we need to import that. I guess we know this is Boolean. Boolean. So there's that. And so we can say const is open equals use selector. Yeah, we could do that, but we can select is open. That goes away. Yeah, so that might be enough. If we refresh this, value is undefined. That's too bad. Select is open. Value is undefined. State. Oh, right, because we haven't actually added the slice to the thingy, to the words are hard. We haven't told the store about our slice. We need to do that, right? Yeah. Dialog slice. That's weird. We are exporting default reducer. Type slice dialog state yada 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 provides no match for the signature. Oh, this is just out of date, right? It took a little bit for it to reparse and type check. So okay, so that should be good now. So we get back to here and refresh. Meals is undefined. Why? Okay, so that's in I think directly in our component. Meals is undefined. Can we see more if we have DevTools? Yeah, logged food actions, line 69. Maybe line 70 actually. Meals is undefined. So I think well, for now we can do this. I guess there is a loading state where we haven't necessarily pulled settings. And I guess we don't have anything to handle loading here. So that could be a to-do for later, is to-do grab loading status and yep, and show in component if dialog is open. All right, but hey, that's something. We have a modal. Interesting. Oh right, so we haven't provided mock service worker. That's why the meals is undefined, because we are failing to make this get user settings request. But we can make that happen. We just need to look at a story where we're doing that. And grab that stuff. I think we're doing that in here, right? So parameters, MSW. Well, I'll grab the whole thing. We're not going to want the whole thing. We only need the last part for get user settings. For the moment, anyway. Then we need... That's not the right file. There we go. Some imports that we need. At least that one. All right. Normal stuff in the console, so let's close that. And now we have a dialog. These don't do anything right now. Right, none of the things do anything because we haven't hooked that up yet. So, okay. I think we are moving in the right direction. So I think everything that we need in the story is done. So I'm going to close this down. We don't need to actually have all this information for it, but that's fine, I suppose. And we don't need that file open. We don't need that file open. We are going to add some thunks somewhere to, well, are we? So we definitely, we have the action to close the dialog. Do we need to involve Redux in the move consumption and delete consumption thunks? Or operations, rather. Thunks are implementation detail of doing that through with Redux. Well, I think one of the things we ultimately want to have happen is once we have successfully done the operation, something needs to happen to cause other things in the UI to happen. So specifically, once we've moved the food item to a different meal, the UI needs to trigger an update of state to show now the food item's in the different meal, right? So otherwise, if this was something that's just fire and forget, where we weren't going to update something in the UI after, which sometimes you do that sort of thing, maybe we could use a hook to do like a use mutation sort of thing to call tRPC and just it would be done. I don't think that's what we want to do here. I guess another question, so the way this was previously implemented, like if we look at the diff here, let me move this to the side, there we go. So the way this was implemented before, we would trigger the delete consumption and then we would immediately close the dialog. So as long as we're okay with that behavior, I guess we can just have two actions here. Yeah, two actions. One to like do the move consumption and another to close the dialog. So let's add the close dialog. So we're going to dispatch, close dialog. Do we need, I think we need to use dispatch, is that right? Yeah. And then we'll need to also, don't we have a, oh, we didn't add that to the exported actions. There we go. Okay, so that one, that's it. We can close the dialog. These other ones will do that same action to close the dialog, but we'll click delete there, and then it's gone. Same thing here. We can also click done, and then it just goes away. So that is that. Um, Also, the way this is set up, we're kind of assuming that we're going to have context about what we're doing. Oh, we don't need this interface anymore. From the store. And so that's another reason, like, with kind of the direction we've gone, it will make sense to have a thunk to interface with Redux to be able to have an action that will do the move or the delete. Okay. Yeah. Save that. But where are those actions going to live is a question. Because it doesn't really have anything to do with the dialogue. And that's where I'm not sure. Let's see. So it might make sense to have a meal slice, right? Because one potential solution for the issue of, oh, we need the diary to update after we made the change, is to have basically what's in the diary in a slice in the store, and maybe these operations the actions that we'll call the tRPC operations, procedures rather. I spent too much time with GraphQL. The tRPC procedures can be invoked from there, from thunks inside of that. Maybe call it a diary slice, because that is the primary thing that we are concerned with. Maybe that makes sense, to have a diary slice. We'll get kind of the very basic things we're going to need here. We'll eventually need that. We'll leave that there for now, and then something like this. Okay. F2 diary slice. Diary state. Don't know what's going to be there quite yet, exactly. I think also settings will be a useful kind of reference for how this should work. Yeah, so we're going to create some thunks. Like so. Okay, so let's be diary. Start with move consumption. We're also going to need base tRPC. And create async thunk. Okay. So we need a payload. Let's see. Yep. All right, so this tells us exactly what the payload needs to contain for this to work. And I think, we could try to look at the global store to get, well, not meal ID, because meal ID is what the user is selecting through the dialog, and so will be passed into the action. But we could get the consumption ID, but we'd have to read it from the dialog slice. And that seems kind of weird. I think I think it'll make more sense. So first of all, if we do this, will it infer the payload backwards? No. Okay. We could do some fancy TypeScript to get the input type of mutate, of move consumption. For that matter, I mean, I guess, hold on. So there should be a way for us to look at the type. Well, so the procedure is in diary. It's move consumption. So it is this. And so, one, you could theoretically abstract this. And we do this other places where we take the Zod validation and we turn that into a type. But we should be able to ask for the input type. And I think there are examples of that. I just need to figure out where those are. Where we are looking... I think it's in some of our other code here. So yeah, here's examples of types. So router input. Yeah, so I don't know about having this types file that has all this stuff in it. You can see there's a lot of stuff that I had defined previously. I think it might just be more straightforward to... Yeah, I don't know, because I think it will make sense to keep router input and output here. And we'll import this. Yeah, let me export these for convenience sake. So these basically allow you to look up what the input or output types are for any of the tRPC procedures. But I don't think long term I'll want to keep these here. This feels like this is just like excess kind of boilerplatey. Like we can just look them up from router input and output. Okay, so going back to the file that we were working on, diary slide. Yeah, there we go. This payload should be that. And then, of course, it just needs to figure out that, yeah, okay. So there we go. So now, this type checks. This is the right thing. And we have a thing. And then we can say extra reducers. Yeah, something like that. And then what does this look like again? How do we use these things? We say, wait, what is, oh, I see. Okay, so then, okay. So let me just borrow this. I think this will be a good place to start. It's not fetching settings though. It's, oh, move consumption. Cannot rename this element. Well, I'll just replace all. Okay. So this is a start. So some interesting things, so some things we're going to need here. Idle or pending, sure. Error, string or null. That'll be a start. And then, oops. Loading idle, error, null. So what's it complaining about? We don't have any reducers. So let's just say reducers is an empty object. Yeah, we don't need to export anything there, and we are exporting move consumption. So that type checks. Now the thing I need to remember to do in index.ts is import diary slice. And say diary is diary slice. Okie dokie. So back to logged food actions. Okay. So this is going to look like dispatch, move consumption. Yep. We'll add the import. There we go. And it's not going to be happy because it also needs a consumption ID. But we don't have a consumption ID. So, and we're not passing it to this component, but we can just read it from the state. The state should have the consumption ID from the dialog. Like so. So we are going to create Yep. 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 Okay. And then we'll add that import. So now we have details here. Now, is this, how is this going to work? What's interesting here is that we know something that I think TypeScript doesn't, right? So if we are open, then this details object should be specifically one particular value, one subtype from our discriminated union. But it doesn't know that. Which means if we tried to do details.consumption ID, it's not going to like that. Because it doesn't exist on all the types. Also, it's not happy about the async thunk action. Yeah, but regardless. And then, of course, details is possibly null. Even if we were to do this, the fact that the value of this open is related to the value of details isn't something that TypeScript knows about. Should it be linked? I guess here's a thought. Instead of having open as state being true or false, we could use the fact that details is null or not to represent that. And then it definitely would be linked. Not that TypeScript would know that anyway. I guess open here is potentially redundant. Yeah. Which, that doesn't change anything about what's going on here. But I think that is just one less piece of data to worry about. Now, of course, we could do this the lazy way. Use selector, any dialog details, or null. Let's see, now we are leaking, like, now we have to talk about this meal update food here. In another place. I don't really care for that. Like, we're gonna have to do that anyway when we call the dispatch to open the dialog. We'll have to pass in that string. I don't know. I don't have any better ideas at the moment, so we'll leave that as is. Yeah. Think about how to type this. Better. Okay. So that's good. Let me let's look at the actual UI here and try this out. So this, right? So we need to go back to is it diary meal? Yep. Let's update this so that we can see this in action. So we want to const dispatch equals use dispatch. Did we? Okay, well, it was already imported. So we're gonna dispatch. Yep, except we're not using enums here. We're just gonna do some things. That. Why? Okay. It's taking a while to figure out what it's doing. Dialog type. Yep. Consumption ID is ID. Why does it need the... Why are we passing a meal ID? Was there something here where... No. I mean, there probably should be something where we're passing in the current meal ID so that we're not... I mean, it's kind of harmless to give an option to move the item to the meal it's already in, but we might might want to do something else there. Okay, so that should allow us to click this now. Hey, let's move it to dinner. That does nothing. Interesting. I guess we'll keep that open. So we are, if not is open, return. It's not strictly necessary. I don't think that should... Oh, it did do something. We just didn't capture the... Oh, right, we don't have it XHR set, so we weren't seeing the request. So it did move it to dinner. I guess I don't need that check there anyway. So it didn't move it. It just didn't refresh the page. So like we can move it to lunch, and we can see, hey, here's move consumption. Right, so we can see that request. Consumption ID 48, move to meal 2. If we refresh, then we should see it in the lunch meal. There it is. But that gets back to kind of the problem that we talked about earlier on, which is that right now there's not a way for us to refresh the view. Let me go find a different day that has maybe, okay, the 12th has a couple of items. There we go. Interesting. Oh, right, so this is an abort because we did a navigation away. Okay, that's fine. So I think next step is to hook up the part that allows us just to remove the consumption, the item from a meal. And that kind of wraps up kind of the local things that we're trying to do. And then we need to figure out how to make it so that the diary page will refresh. Yeah. So we're going to copy this dispatch, and we're going to put this here, and we're going to call delete consumption. I guess we're doing this backwards, but yeah, so that's basically done. We don't need the meal ID for deleting the consumption. We just need the consumption ID. We need it to actually exist, so we'll update the import. We'll F12 that, and that'll bring us to where the thunk is defined. Copilot did not just automatically generate. There we go. Okay. Although we're calling it delete consumption. Yep. 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 And then we just need to provide... Can we... I'm going to guess that we can just make multiple calls like this. Did we do that in the other one? No, we just chained them all the way through. Well, let's see if that works. Let me refresh just to make sure we're refreshed. And we'll delete this. And that did call delete consumption. Consumption ID 50, which is presumably this item. And response was a successful looking thing, I guess. We'll refresh, and our organic ginger cubes are gone from breakfast. Maybe this should just say like no items here instead of showing the table. I don't know. Well, regardless, it works. The 17th is a day where we have a bunch of items. Let's go look at that. 17th of March. There we go. A bunch of quick ads. Let's remove a quick ad. Does that work? I think so. We should just have one calorie quick ad left. There we go. Seems to work. Okay. I guess we can also, let's move this one to lunch. Make sure that still works after the other changes. Yeah, both of them are there. I'll move the 1 calorie one to dinner and refresh again. Okay, so that's all well and good. Feeling pretty happy about that. And all right. Okay. So yes. So move consumption result is interesting. Okay, in diary meal, just down here, what are we doing with move consumption result? We're showing kind of status information about the move, which is pretty weird. User settings status as well. Use selector, select settings. Okay, so what is that? That gets us just settings. I don't know what these errors are about. It's probably just loading does not. Yeah, okay. Just confused temporarily. It happens sometimes. But settings is just the user settings. So like in diary meal, where we are looking at user settings here, like this thinks it's a result object, like results, which is a wrapper that provides like status information, but that's all wrong. Also, are we using user settings in here? I mean, besides the show, like, no, it's just to show status information. So, we can do something else. We can just say loading error. And we can do something fancier in the future. Yeah, I know you don't know what that means right now. I'll fix it. Yeah. So then these things don't exist anymore. We don't need to have them there at all. And instead, we have loading and error. Right, so this is the kind of the inner component that our connected component is going to be using. So we want to just provide the data to render out. And then I do know React. Yeah, okay. Right, and so user settings is not a thing we pass in there anyway, nor is that. What we want to know, yeah, we didn't even need that. What we want to know is, I guess, const loading an error. Use selector. Select diary status. Might be a reasonable sounding name for a selector that's going to read the state, the loading and error state, from our diary slice. And so we're going to export const select diary status, create selector. Yeah, that's how that goes. Diary. Yep. That's not right. That's kind of weird. Okay. Function implicitly has a return type. Any business does not have a return type annotation is referenced directly in the directory in one more of its. Okay. Sure. Good job. That is a thing. Okay. And then we'll import this. And then we're going to pass in loading and error. And what's the problem? Oh, right. Okay. So the problem with this is that I guess we want to actually, yes, we'll make these Boolean and string and null, right? And so loading is loading if the value is pending, I guess, is what we're landing on. Does that get us closer? What is the error type supposed to be? String or undefined? String or null? Okay, well, these are not optional, or okie dokie. So that at least takes care of a couple of things, and that gets rid of a couple of the old imports that we had from our old system. We don't need select settings anymore here. Let's move a couple of these things up to the top. Okay. Let's make sure to explicitly leave a to-do there. This is a thing that needs to be fixed. But first we need to like define meal add food and all these things. But I don't think we're gonna have quite time to get into that too much today. Got about a half hour left of time for the stream this morning. Is there anything else we need to do? Right. So I think let's see if we can deal with the fact that we want the diary to refresh. So that means going back to, I think this top, is this the top? No, one more level higher. There we go. Diary.tsx here. Let's close the other things. Accumulating a lot of tabs. Let's just get rid of those. So here, I think we did last time, we added this call to use query on the list consumptions by meal. I think what we're going to have to do is replace this with a thunk. And then what we can do, I think we can leave this here for now. I mean, maybe forever. I think this is fine. But the meal result, I think we're going to use a thunk, and we're going to use, so we're going to invoke that action when this component loads, like when it's mounted using useEffect, and then we will use a selector to read the meals. I guess I don't know if we need to do that here though, right? So right now we're just kind of like pushing meals through our components. I guess to here, so that's not that far. I think I'd rather do that than have like sprinkle Redux everywhere. Yeah. Well, here's a thought. If we used a thunk, an action in a useEffect when the component was mounted, I guess it's not impossible. Thinking about like the props changing, like date, then we'd want to fetch that data instead, and that gets kind of awkward. Like if we're navigating around, then it's possible that the parent component that's using this component will just it'll update the props without unmounting the component, and so then our useEffect that gets fired on mount won't get fired again. So that's a problem, if true. Oops. Here's an idea. Nope. Okay, stop Copilot. That's not what I'm after. Date. And I mean, I guess you could use useEffect and pass in the user ID and the date as well, right? So then if those things change, that would also trigger an action. So we have user ID and date, and so we see it twice because we're on React 18 and we're in strict mode. So, and we're in dev mode. So the component gets, after it's mounted, it gets unmounted and ring-mounted. It's the way I understand that's working. So this won't actually happen in production, but that's what we're seeing there. So if we were to go to the day before, useEffect does get fired. If we refresh the page, we should see it gets fired twice because we're mounted, and it has the date. And presumably, if we were looking at a different user's diary, then it would have the user ID. So that, I guess, can work. So what we would do here is we would want to, interesting. That's an interesting suggestion Copilot's making about doing some kind of invalidation of the user profile if the user ID potentially changed. I don't think that's relevant for us right now. But we want to do something like dispatch. No. Fetch diary user ID date, and of course, oops, my cursor was not where I thought it was. Dispatch, use dispatch. Okay. And then in diary.ts in store slices, we're going to want a new thunk. Yeah. I guess we're going to call it fetch diary. That's what we did for settings, right? We called it fetch settings. Might as well be consistent. Doesn't need to be. There you go. That's not a real thing. Hold on, what is it? Diary / the list consumptions by meal is, I think, the thing that we're after. It was trying. Okay, so it's not a mutate though, is it? It's query. I guess we want to, though, return what we get back, so we can incorporate that into the state. And then we just need another set of cases here. If it's pending, we're loading. If it's fulfilled, sure. If it's rejected, error message. But the part that we're missing here is state dot, well, hold on, so action dot payload dot meals. Okay, so we have a list of meals that have entries. So I think what we want to do is want to state dot meals equals action.payload.meals. And then we'll see if we can, nope, okay. We'll need to update diary state to have meals. I guess that is not right. First of all, that's router input. That's just wrong. Meal array? Meal with entries array? I think that's right. That seems to be okay with this, for what that's worth. So now we can fetch diary. Sure. And add that import. And that seems odd. Argument. Oh. So this is just the issue of it doesn't like the thunk type. Again. I mean, I guess. Dispatch. Right, and so then we get rid of this. I would say const meals equals use selector. Select diary meals. And then we'll provide a selector for doing just that. Like so. There. Yeah, that was only being let go by TypeScript because we had this thing that was explicitly saying this type was a diary state. Isn't there a new TypeScript keyword? Well, maybe not super new, but something to use instead of as. Like conforms or something. New keywords. Yeah, there's infer. Implements. No. Extends. Overriding. There's a thing you can do with an object, and maybe it's not even applicable for this, but if I don't find this right now, I'm going to forget about it, and that's not how you keep up to date on things. Maybe find a change log. I think it was added after 4.0. What's new in 4.0? Optional chaining, class property inference. don't see it there. Type alias, restrictor checks. Nope. 4.3. Yeah. Satisfies. TypeScript developers are often faced with a dilemma. We want to ensure that some expression matches some type, but also want to keep the most specific type of the expression for inference purposes. Type matches some type without changing the result. So let's undo this for a second. So this is what it was before, and TypeScript's not complaining. If we change this to satisfies, that gives us an error, right? Because property meals is missing, but required. So I think this is maybe better. Let's see. If we add meals, no. Right? Type pending is not assignable to type idle. So the issue is now initial state is not of type diary state. That's what as does. Unfortunately, as also says ignore what's actually in this and just assume that it's diary state, which is not great. Like, I guess what you could do... What could you do? You could... Hey, wait a second. Is there a type argument here? Expect 2 to 3 type arguments. Got 1. Yeah, that's kind of annoying. Yeah, I see why that example had this like this. That, you know, ultimately we've been reproducing kind of this structure originally from settings and then dialogue and diary from an example that maybe it was from the Redux Toolkit docs or wherever it was from. But I can see why it's like this, because this then allows TypeScript to infer what that first thing is. I guess we could take this and then give it the arguments, and then this would also mean that if we left out meals, yeah, now we get a type error. So what do these type arguments mean for create slice? So state, case reducers, and so what is case reducers here used for? Create slice options. I see. Right, so right now this doesn't have any reducers, which is why this is an empty object. Like if we were to look at settings, which does have some reducers, and we were to hover over create slice, Then you can see here's the types for all the reducers. And so that would get kind of unwieldy. We wouldn't want to have to pass in all of those. That's kind of unfortunate. I wonder if there's a way around that. A good way of defining this. Okay, well, regardless. 10 minutes left. Let's see if we can make a little bit more progress. So, we now have the ability to fetch the data. We have our selector. We're reading in meals. We're passing that in down through props into the child components. So if we refresh this now this is actually using Redux to pull in the list of consumptions and showing that. So if we wanted to have another action that refreshed the current diary, right? So right now we're fetching the diary and we have user ID and date. What if we didn't have user ID and date available? And we wanted to say, whatever the current diary is that we're showing, refresh it. So for that to work, I think we would need to save some of that information. Which I think we can do in our in this code here, right? Because we should have the action. So date, null or string, and user ID, null or number, maybe. Oh, right. This is not the type. This is this is the actual data. The type is up here. User ID, string or null. Except no, it's number or null. Number and date is string or null. Okay, and what we're going to do is when we do this, we're also going to save state.userid equals action dot meta.arg.userid. Is that right? Number or undefined or null. There we go. And state.date. Yep. Which should be a string. Okay. So then we should never have to say or null there. And then if we fail, I guess we still would want to be able to potentially refresh on failure. But if we're pending, we should clear that state out. Like if we're loading something, yeah, I think in that case on error, we still want to set these values into the state. Yeah, I think that'll make sense. So now we need a new thunk. Refresh diary. Yep. Except this is not going to take a payload. I think there's a way for that to work. Did I do that in settings? Yeah. Yes, like that. Except it'll be different because this will be our diary state. And then we want to return await. Yep. except number or null is not assignable to number or undefined. So this needs to be or undefined. And then date. So if there's no date, just return. Okay. There's no way I'm gonna just copy and paste this again. Instead, I guess we're going to refactor. We're going to extract to function and module scope. I'm gonna call this setup diary fetch builder. We have to change those arguments a little bit. Can we infer the type? Yes. Perfect. And then let's see here. Make the second argument fetch. Make it thunk. There you go. Ooh, no. Control H. There we go. Replace that. And then in where we're calling it, we'll pass in fetch diary. And then can we infer a thing? That's a lot. Can we make Typescript do a lot of the work for us? Extends async thunk. No, because this takes type arguments. Okay, so what we can do is maybe do this as t. T U V autocomplete. Like I don't know what these are supposed to be. Just figure it out. Typescript. What is V supposed to be? Okay. Can we get away without the third one? No. Okay. V extends something. Thunk API config extends async thunk config. Async thunk config. Come on. Nope, doesn't know where that's coming from. Can we... Okay, let's look at this. Uh-huh. Okay. Well, let's cheat. Oh, I see. So T needs to be... Let's take a look at what this was going to tell us. I mean, isn't this part is just diary state? Thunk arg. Yeah, and And then we're going to say any here anyway. So I guess that works. And then no type arguments. Error, action.error is of type unknown. What is action in this context? Payload action unknown string r yada yada yada. Async thunk rejected action creator. So why? Async thunk config. The problem is that async thunk config is not an exported type, so I can't just give it that because that is not something I can import. I guess I can do that. Is that better than just copying and pasting the same thing twice? I don't know. Does it work? Doesn't seem very happy. Okay. I am going to give up on this for now. If we have to do it a third time, we'll have to figure out how to do better. So this is, I guess, I could always use the loop here. Yeah. Fetch diary, refresh diary. Yep. Will this be better? User ID does not exist on type void. Right. These do need to be different. Okay. Okay. Well, that was a whole waste of time, sort of. I think if we're figuring stuff out, if we're like learning something that's gonna let us move forward, it's not a waste of time. It is just maybe not the most efficient use of time, but we're moving forward. Refresh diary. And so this is gonna be unhappy. Action.payload is possibly undefined. Right, because in refresh, we could just return, right? So, right, it could fulfill, but action.payload, if we don't have one, just return. If we do have one, so we don't need to do anything with the user ID and date here because we're just taking whatever's already in there and we're trying to do a refresh. So we didn't need the same code, which I would have seen more clearly if I would have tried that. Parameter state implicitly has any type. Why? Let's see what's going on up here. Does not have type inefficient. Is this a real issue or is this? So I have a terminal where I have TSC watch running. Diary number yeah. So let's close that. Sometimes it gets a little behind. I did that because VS Code, the TypeScript checking that it does is like for files you have open. Whereas one thing that I sometimes find very helpful is to actually have like show me all the errors across all the files so I can see where things that are being impacted by things I'm changing in other files are, and I can quickly find them by looking at this. But that doesn't work by default in VS Code. But I have this task in my task.json that I have running by default somewhere in all the tasks. There's a task that does TSC run with the problem matcher. And so I have this set to run when, watch rather. Have it set to run in the background, have it set to be a thing that is automatically run in my dev environment, which is part of my startup sequence, TSC watch. And so that will surface errors, but sometimes it gets a little behind, and then it gives me a bunch of fake errors that have nothing to do with the code that's actually there anymore, and that gets a little distracting. But okay, so now we have a refresh thunk, and so that's all well and good. It's not something we're going to use here, but I guess the question is, where do we want to use that? You know, we could, in our diary slice, I mean, I think this will be useful, but I wonder if there's some way we could do this work, like trigger this when move consumption or delete consumption happen. Like then do the next thing. Because I would hate to have to I wouldn't want to do the wiring of that in the component. It should live here somewhere. I just don't know exactly where yet. So I think that's going to be a thing for us to figure out next time. I am going to do this. So save work from last two streams. I'm going to save all that, commit all that into a commit, and then I'm going to add some to-dos here. So what we really want to do is say to-do, figure out some way to hold on, I gotta turn off screencast mode. That's getting really distracting. Let me know maybe in the next stream, or if you're watching the VOD on YouTube, let me know what you think about the screencast mode, if it's helpful or it's distracting. Be really appreciated. So parting to-dos, figure out some way to run refresh diary once either move consumption or delete consumption are done. I think that is something we'll want to have happen pretty much universally. I think if there were circumstances where we were doing these operations in other contexts, maybe that wouldn't be true, but at least for now, you're going to be on a diary page to do these operations. And maybe we'd actually have these thunks somewhere else, or maybe not even thunks, or doing something else if this was happening elsewhere. So I think for now it will make sense that we'll always want to trigger that refresh diary to pull in updated state. I mean, the alternative would be to manipulate the front end state to change the meal list, the entries in the meals, or change state without by hand. In the reducers. Well, extra reducers. So that's a to-do the to-do is to figure out which one of those things to do, if we want to do, what's going to make sense. I mean, if the operation is successful, we don't really need to ask for the list of items again. We're not adding a new thing. I think if we were adding something, there might be additional backend information, like IDs of entries that we want. But maybe we don't even need to use refresh diary right now. I think there may be other things we'll want to use this for, so we'll leave this for now. Yeah. I mean, ultimately, we did need to have this diary slice and have the list of meals for the current diary view here so that we can manipulate it, whether that manipulation happens through work that we're doing really in these fulfilled cases, or it happens by doing a refresh. Either way, we still needed all of this, given how things are structured. All right. Well, I'm going to leave this uncommitted so we can very easily see this is where we left off last time. Next time around. You're very welcome, Mono. Figuring out app build issues. Yeah. Thanks for lurking and hanging out, and good luck with your app build issues. Geez, very very early in the morning for you. Yeah. I'll be doing a coding stream again next week, same time block. Yeah. So all right. Switch to my finisher now. Yeah. See ya.